If I remember right, he had all the girls.
Right.
Too.
Yeah. The show had a nice car.
Which part did you gravitate to?
I was like, wow, that's possible. Why not that?
Perfect.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was not my lived experience at the time, and nor has it been after being a lawyer. But still, it was, it was Hollywood, and it was a neat appeal.
Welcome to Live Ready Podcast, Beyond Think and Grow Rich, with me, your host, David R. Ibarra. And today we have our guest is Councilman from the Salt Lake County, Ross Romero. Welcome, Ross.
Thank you. Appreciate the invitation.
It's our pleasure. Look, Ross, I've known you quite some time.
Yes.
And what I'd like to do in the first part of this podcast is talk about, how is it your younger years were? I understand that your mother was a school teacher and growing up in Utah. Tell us a little bit about that and your preparation to determine what it is you wanted to do as a career and the things that are important to you.
Oh, well, thank you. I guess I would say my parents came from Colorado to the University of Utah to get their master's degrees. Mm-hmm. And my father got his master's degree in social work and my mother in public elementary education. It was great. I remember living at the University of Utah Village back in the day. They divorced shortly after completing their studies. And so I was raised in Salt Lake with my school teacher mother. My dad went back to Colorado and was a successful social worker in schools in Colorado. And so I always, had those formidable years where in our home we had a lot of educators and we had a lot of teachers because that's who my mom knew and socialized with. She was a very active teacher. And really loved to teach, I will say. She is remembered fondly by the students I see sometimes, and they'll ask me to wish my mother well and talk about a good experience they have. And so I think what I would say is because of the parents I had, being part of the community in a service-minded way was something that they both stressed in a positive way. And so I think I picked up on that. Ultimately, several years later, my mother remarried. And so my stepdad, Tim Bruce, a mechanical engineer who retired now from ATK. It was also Hercules back in the day. Right. So, grew up in the Salt Lake area, very much middle class, right? A school teacher mom and a mechanical engineer stepdad. Had a very good relationship with my dad, though. I would spend summers in Colorado with my dad and Christmas and Easter.
Well, it's interesting that in the last podcast we had last week, we had Lionel Sosa, which Lionel is just a giant in advertising in the United States community. He is a powerhouse. But one of the things that he did while a fellow at Harvard, he talked about Harvard wanted to find out why is it that 12 students coming from the inner city were doing very well at Harvard, the same as some of the best prepared private school young folks that entered Harvard. And the one thing that they found, and they found very clearly, there was one connection. And that one connection was each of the 12 had a strong mentor, and the mentor was a school teacher.
Oh, wow.
And so as we look at that, it would seem to me, from your earliest of memories, it would be seated into your subconscious that commands you that opportunity through education is just like a dumb moment. Doesn't everybody do that? But unfortunately, our nation, not everyone does that. Yeah. So tell me, how has that impacted your belief in opportunity for others in the area of education?
Yeah, so I say, because my mother was so active in teaching, she was on committees for the Utah Education Association. And so I was always around educators and teachers and principals, right? And I think they did have an influence on me in many ways. I remember I was at a very popular ice cream shop when I was younger. And my mom was always a teacher.
Hold it. Don't embarrass me now by telling me it was the wrong ice cream shop.
I won't mention it because I could get in trouble.
You didn't mention the name of the ice cream shop. So I'm assuming it was not Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor restaurant at Fashion Place Mall.
I don't think it was, actually.
That would have been the one I owned.
Yeah, it was.
So right here on the show, you didn't think I would notice that you was being a trader in the area of ice cream.
It was
eating.
available. It was, I believe it was at Foothill, actually. Uh-huh. But what I will say is, I remember my mom scolding some of the kids that were at this ice cream parlor that were actually acting in a way they shouldn't, right? Being disruptive, being too loud. But I was embarrassed because I'm like, Mom, like, you don't have to be a teacher at all times and talk to these students about how they should behave. But I realized, in fact, she always was a teacher, and she educated others and loved that and wanted to make sure, that these kids needed to do the right thing, regardless if their parents weren't around, and they weren't. Yeah. And so
it is amazing that for a lot of us that have had success, I'm one, that if it hadn't been for Mr. Francis at Joaquin Elementary, my fifth grade teacher that really noticed that I was lagging, that I wasn't holding my own with the other kids, and had some difficulty in reading and some other things, took me under his wing and made me feel like it was okay. And later I was able to find out that I had surfaced dyslexic, and it confused me because I couldn't understand why is it sometimes it was clear, other times it wasn't. But that guy just took me under, and he didn't get paid to stay after class. He didn't get paid for that, but teaching was just a really the mission of his life.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our teachers are that way.
Yeah. I think that's right. And to that end, I think that's kind of how I found myself in law. Mm-hmm. So ultimately I went to the University of Utah and then got into a few law schools. One of them was the University of Michigan. I'm going to stop you
here for a minute and ask
you
a question.
Yeah.
When you were going to middle school and to high school, when did it enter your mind, Ross, that law was going to be something that interested you and you were going to begin to get prepared for a university and then a law school? When did it enter your mind? Was it while you were at a university or middle school, high school?
Yeah, very much high school. Mm-hmm. There was a popular show, L.A. Law, back in that day. I thought it was interesting. I also wanted to know.
Wait a minute, hold it. L.A. Law was not just about the law, man. If I remember right, he had all the girls.
Right. Too. Yeah. The show had a nice car.
Which part did you gravitate to?
I was like, wow, that's possible. Why not that?
Perfect.
Yeah. So I mean, that was not my lived experience at the time, and nor has it been after being a lawyer. But still, it was it was Hollywood, and it was a neat appeal. Mm-hmm. But I'll also say that I remember I had talked to my dad also about social work, and my dad, I think, also encouraged me to think to law. He said, I can help families on a one-by-one basis. If I see a child is being neglected or abused in a home, I can intervene and assist that child. But he said, Ross, you can go further in law because you can be at the table in a bigger way for clients in a way that I can't advocate for them. And I took that to heart. And so that and the interest in making sure I understood the rights that I would have as a citizen, right? Understanding what is a reasonable search and seizure, understanding when law enforcement can come into a residence with a warrant, without a warrant. I never had, I have to say, negative interaction with law enforcement, but I always had this idea that, man, that's crazy. That could happen. What would I do? Would I know what to do? Would I know what to say? So I think looking after my own civil liberties is what also interested me in understanding more about the law.
Well, there is no doubt in our nation, the way that our laws, the way that our Constitution, and again, our Constitution gets amended. I think it's 27 times it's been amended. So it's not something that's supposed to be unchanged. It can be amended, but it's not easy as and it shouldn't be. But the one idea that we can't have law enforcement, safety, livable, walkable cities, and still have the protection of liberties is a nonsense. You can have both. And for one to want to have our liberties protected does not mean they don't care about law enforcement or the enforcement of things on the book. They go together a certain way by design.
Absolutely. Yeah, they do work together in society and in government, right? And so I will say I really enjoyed my years practicing law. I didn't do the civil rights law that I imagined I might do.
You were in labor law, if I recall,
yeah.
right?
So I will say some of this has to do with the debt I took on in going to law school. Mm-hmm. I went to the University of Michigan for law school, which was a lot more expensive than if I had gone to the University of Utah.
Right.
And so I was recognizing that I would likely have to go into a more corporate setting to pay down those student loans. But once those loans were paid off, I would have had the education and the ability to think and maybe do something else.
The experience.
Yeah, yeah.
And then two is that, I oftentimes, people ask me all the time, do I support labor? And, absolutely, there is a big place for labor, particularly in the trades where an individual isn't going to be connected to a company long term. It is an assignment to build a building, etc. But should a company have to be unionized? And I'd say no, if they're good, if they respect talent in the same way they respect capital. Oftentimes we'll see that isn't the case, and that is where what I really like to see in America, where the neutralizer oftentimes is a lawyer. The neutralizer is a suit. If there's something that's not just, we have a way of getting in front of the judicial system to have a logical discussion to argue our point with there being a remedy.
Yeah, I think that's right. And both sides of the judicial system and the advocacy system, right? A plaintiff's attorney representing the individual who has a claimed wrong, and the defense attorney. Sometimes, by the way, what the defense attorneys will do is to talk to their company client and say, you misstepped. You need to resolve this,
right?
Because it's very likely to be found in favor of the plaintiff. Yeah. So some of they talk about lawyers being lawyers and counselors.
Yeah.
That counsel piece is part of what I considered part of the profession, which is to educate my client about the do's and don'ts and doing it properly and doing it well and doing it fairly.
Now,
Anyway, I did enjoy that aspect in
Now, if
in
I'm not
practicing.
mistaken, you you joined a pretty prominent law firm, and you got to the level of partner?
I did, yes. It was Jones Waldo. It's actually been mostly absorbed into another law firm here in the city. But
What law firm is that now?
Parsons Bailey.
Okay,
yeah,
right,
Parsons
right,
Bailey.
right,
A lot of
right.
the attorneys went to Parsons Bailey.
Good law firm.
Yeah, both. Really well regarded, quite established in the community.
So, the one thing that we can know a little bit about Ross Romero, he had a goal, set the goal, I want to be, had a purpose, determine what talent that you would need in order to achieve that, become a lawyer, went through the work of 4 years of a university, and how many years as a law student?
3 years.
3, so 7 years, executed the actions to achieve the end, and became an attorney, then practiced as an associate, and then became a partner.
Yes,
Man,
all true.
That's pretty. That's pretty impressive. Many people don't get that being a partner is not an accident. That's hard work.
It is hard work, and it was rewarding and challenging and interesting. I will say it now brings me to where I started to enter public service more earnestly. Right. I had been elected to the Utah House when I was at my law firm, right. And I had an interest. Public policy became more interesting, and I saw what my dad had suggested, which is you can do more for people as a lawyer with the credibility of law in advocating for people. But for me, I also saw the natural next extension is in policymaking and as someone in public policy, as an elected official.
There is no doubt that the American dream cannot be experienced without the legislature, laws, opportunities that are done by thoughtful people. And I got to tell you, not all legislators are very thoughtful. When you read a law, that's just not their talent. Now, you coming out of, big briefs, I was just going over, we're participating, or my brokering company is a couple of buy-sells, and quite large, and going through an asset purchase agreement, 65 pages, and you really get scared when all 65 pages make sense to you, because
you're starting to
not all of
see
them
it a
do.
few times.
But in other words, your practice of preparation in the law really prepared you for creating, understanding, and perhaps even reading legislation that you were going to vote on, which not every lawmaker does.
Yeah, I'll say that it's easier in the state legislature than maybe back in Congress, where things will get dropped quickly and they expect you to vote along party lines. That isn't the experience I had here in the Utah legislature. But I realized that I could do more as an elected official. That's really the transition I made from the advocacy in law, which I really enjoyed advocating for clients, to now advocating more for the public and in the interest of the public. And of course, you have to try to persuade your colleagues about why your view has merit or why your amendment has merit as part of the legislation moving forward.
How is it that you had a reputation with the Democratic counterparts and your Republican counterparts you were respected? How is that?
Well, I'll also
it's not
say,
common anymore.
Yeah. When I went from law, I went into banking. And so these are two professions that I think have economic standing and credibility, which Republicans have traditionally let out on. And so one of the ways I think I connected with my Republican colleagues is to talk politics, is to talk about tax policy. One of my committee's assignment was revenue and tax, and the other was judiciary, right? Kind of blending my experience in banking and in law to offer input, value, insight in the practical aspects of these things. And so I think having those conversations, understanding how businesses operate, talking on the business side of things is a way I could connect. And by the way, that's important, right? Because everyone brings their perspective to the legislature. I don't know how to be a cattleman, or I'm not in agriculture. So I needed to take the feedback from those that had that lived experience, and I could share mine. A great example that I have raised with others is education. We want high-quality, educated individuals. So as someone who represented the Salt Lake City area, when I talked about that, I was talking about class size and how we put a lot of burden and challenge on our teachers with so many students.
Right.
But if I talk to a rural legislator about that, they give me a blank stare because they don't have large class sizes. They say, hey, Ross, what I have concern about is transportation. How do I get these kids from rural areas to be able to come to a schoolhouse and to participate and have that social experience and the educational experience. Right. As soon as we started figuring out what we need, they need transportation dollars, I need class size dollars, then we're actually talking about creating the ecosystem of better educated students in the state of Utah that everyone could benefit from.
Isn't it amazing that common sense is not so common? Because that's a common sense approach is listening is an art. And when somebody says, I don't respect you as a legislator because you changed your mind, I just got, boy, that is really surprising to me, because I once heard a very prominent a politician, happened to be President Clinton. He allowed me to ask him some questions, and I said to him, I said, hey, sir, Mr. President, how does it make you feel when you're labeled a waffler? He stood up, walked over to me, and I remember he put his right hand on my shoulder, and he said, David, I prefer to call that listening.
Wow.
No people that have a conversation should leave that conversation with the same opinion they had if they were listening.
Imagine if you could have learned the principles of success as a child. At Yes Our Kids Can, we believe it's never too early to teach our children how to achieve their full potential. The purposeful tools of Yes Our Kids Can are designed to teach resilience, self-efficacy, problem solving, character building, and life planning. You can help your child develop the skills needed for a successful and independent adult life. All you have to do is enroll your child today.
So many of us right now today, it's almost like somebody's keeping score if you listen, because you changed your mind, you waffled. Right. How I look at it, as you know, I'm a Democrat, but I'm really an independent. I absolutely am as disgusted with the Democratic parties, particularly the state party, as I am the far right Republican Party, because I there's a couple of people that are politicians, are just screamers, and they think that's helping when they're just screaming, angry, and talking and angry all the time, and that's just somebody that's lost control of their temperament, and that's not representing anyone. On the far right, same, screaming, yelling, and it seems to me that the middle is not being served anymore. It's whoever is the loudest, and that's just not who we are. We can do better. Now, how did you manage that in the legislature, or was it that bad when you were there?
I felt like I was fairly heard and was given opportunity to make my case. Mm-hmm. I always also went in with an understanding of the party positioning. So I was a Democrat. I am a Democrat, but an elected Democrat in the Utah legislature, where there are a lot fewer Democrats. Mm-hmm. So Democrats with our own votes could not prevail. We wouldn't have enough votes. Mm-hmm. So understanding that, making our case, which is very important because the area I represented was much more diverse, right? It had LGBTQ community members, it had ethnic diversity, it had religious diversity, it had some of the diversity that I think doesn't exist in some parts of the state in the same degree. Like think Utah County legislators. I don't think you see that same makeup, right? Mm-hmm. And so I had to convince, or at least talk in a way where those legislators could hear. I wasn't necessarily trying to kill their legislation, not that we had the numbers to do that anyway, but to say, look, here's what you proposed. If you modify it just a little, you will protect and you will bring some attention to and benefit to certain of these other communities that, as your bill is written, it doesn't include. So it was really just helping my colleagues see that by modifying or amending these bills, we could be more inclusive. It could really still capture the policy thing that they were trying to accomplish, but recognizing that there's diverse communities and it could be gender, it could be anything. It's just a matter of who do we represent and how do we bring their advocacy to the conversation.
Well, in business we call that leadership. Because it's never you're going to bully your way in to everybody's going to do everything exactly the way you think. Just, good decisions do not get made that way. But it seems like we're now chalking up that if you have a common sense and you include what you can, where you can, build a reputation of somebody that they want to, others that have a different view want to listen to, that's good conversation. That makes for a good path forward. When we're screamers and yellers, as you know, I ran for Salt Lake City mayor.
Yeah.
Didn't prevail, but obviously. But the one thing that really concerned me is Salt Lake City acts like it's not part of the state of Utah. Utah oftentimes acts like Salt Lake City is not part of Utah. We are connected. The Salt Lake City is the capital of Utah, and we have to figure out how it is to work in harmony to protect business, to protect neighborhoods, to protect safety. And Salt Lake City shouldn't look different than, for instance, I just moved and left Salt Lake City, which I thought I would never do. And I live now in North Salt Lake, and I'll tell you what, Ross, I'm ashamed of myself, but holy mackerel, it feels really good.
Yeah.
And then I go up to some shopping center in Centerville, something station, and I'm over there because it was just closer to the house, and I'm walking around, and oh my heavens, it really felt good. It was walkable. It was safe. People were smiling. People were talking. That is the same as what it should be everywhere in this state, regardless of your political views, regardless of what group you belong to, whether it's a political party, a religion, your choice of how you love or what have you. No, being neighborly is just being neighborly, and that's what we have to work back towards. Now, you decided to run for the county council. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I had a great experience serving in the legislature.
Now, you were a representative and a state senator.
That's right. Yep. So I moved from the House to the Senate and then ultimately was the Senate Democratic leader. And there was a time in my life, I ran for county mayor, I should say, too, and didn't prevail there, where my wife rightly suggested that my kids needed a little more attention from me. We have two children. My son now is 21 and my daughter is 16, but they were, much younger 14 years ago when I left the legislature. Well, now it's probably 15, 16 years ago. And so I've been able to spend more time with them and be the soccer dad and be the cheer dad and do those things. And so really enjoyed that. I started a new business in January of 2020. COVID hit in March of 2020. So I unexpectedly had time now where I was trying to launch a business, and I knew, having been an employment lawyer, hiring new consultants in that environment was not going to happen.
Probably not.
I understood the challenge businesses were facing, how to keep their workforce. Could they work from home? Because that really wasn't a concept that we had done back then, right? So I unexpectedly had more time, and I felt like I had a little more to give in politics and in public policy. And so I ran to be the committee man for the Democrats and got myself elected during that window of time. It partly was because I had time unexpectedly, right? I don't know that I had that on my radar at that time, but I always have had a policy interest and a public service interest. So I had this time and ran for committee man, very much enjoyed assisting and trying to assist Democratic candidates and the president with his elevation. This would have been Biden,
right,
coming out of that year. And I was completing that, and the former chair of the party recognized where I lived and recognized the community I had served. And he said, the county council person from the area in which you live is going to retire. I think you should consider running and reemerging as an elected official at the county. And again, it wasn't something that I had been like eyeing or thinking about, but I had now carved out time in my life to emerge into public policy and public service again. And so I ran. And that's, it was in fact a good blend of constituents that I had served previously, and amazingly, at least some remembered me and my service. And so I had a base of support, and I prevailed, and I've enjoyed that policy.
How well did you prevail? You obviously remember the results.
Yeah, I don't know what the number was, but I think it was over 60%.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it was good.
So it was a clear decision.
Yeah, I'll say this, though, and this is funny about local politics. The person that didn't prevail is a former community-minded person and a former judge who had retired from the bench years ago.
Right.
We had a good relationship. I complimented him on what he was doing, and he recognized how hard I had worked. And so I guess what I want to say is you can still put your ideas forward.
Absolutely.
And not be at odds with your opponent, right?
You can disagree without being disagreeable.
Yeah.
And it's sad that we're there. I got to tell you, like for me, thinking about being the mayor of Salt Lake City, I had no dream of being mayor. And as arrogant as this is going to sound, and nobody has ever accused me of being arrogant, it would not have been a promotion for me. It would have been an incredible burden financially because I didn't care whether I got paid or not. It was a 4 years and done for one purpose. We need people that come prepared to manage big items. Salt Lake City, when you count the airport and other things, has about how much in its budget? Would I be exaggerating to say near $1 billion? It's a big budget. And if you haven't come from a world of leadership to be prepared of how do you put together specialized talent teams, no one that is in leadership has all the talent to achieve what they want alone. But the best part is, Ross, you don't have to.
Right.
You have to know how to assemble someone who isn't going to have collaboration on it with folks that don't know the solution, while collaboration is good, and not go and try to learn it themselves, to bring a specialized talent individual that is the expert, that has solved it in another city, so that we aren't always in the planning. It ought to be 10% in the plan, 10% of our time organizing it, 70% executing it, and 10% after we fully executed it the way we intended, following up to see where adjustments need to be made. Now, we need help in the city. There's no doubt about it. I think I called you some time ago, didn't I?
You did.
And I'll tell you something. I called you because I think you should run for mayor. And I want everybody that looks at this. I spend my entire career solving problems. I work in a lot of businesses across this state, across this country, fixing things. And you're a guy who can fix some things that need to be fixed in Salt Lake City. So are you going to give that some consideration?
I am giving that consideration. I'll say it's nice to be called. It's been great. I've actually taken your cues and have been making calls and asking around to, understand what the needs are, understand what the challenges are, understand what the city's doing well, And I think it's absolutely fair to say I am doing some due diligence and preparing myself if that's the direction we move into.
Well, I hope it is. The city needs strong leadership, but more than that, it doesn't need main character syndrome individuals. A team has to work in harmony. And when a team is working in harmony, meaning a group, whether it's the administration and whether it's the council, frankly, that needs a lot of help. Leadership brings them together, and you could look at them from afar, and you wouldn't be able to tell who is the top leader because they're working together in harmony, and we need a little dose of that.
Yeah.
So we're at the end of our conversation, and I'm going to give you the last little bit. Is there anything that you would like to chat about before we end?
You know, this will be a little bit of appreciation to you. You've been in the community for a long while. I've seen your leadership locally and even nationally. You took on ensuring that we had a very successful U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce convention here. Mm-hmm. People know you and your family across the United States and the contribution you and Mickey have made specifically.
Right.
And so, you know, there's a lot of admiration that I think people need to understand far exceeds Salt Lake City and the state of Utah in what you have done and how successful you are. We need in the community to have opportunities to talk to successful business leaders. But for those of us that also see ourselves in what you've done and in some of your lived experiences, that's also important. So thank you for what you've done. Thank you for inviting me here. I will say in that same vein, I always remember that I am in some way providing some of the youth the ability to look at me and say, hey, if this guy can do it, I could do it. Because there's nothing special about me except the opportunity I've had and then go and doing it, right? And so I take a lot of time to also take calls from people say, hey, I'm interested in public service. How do I do it? And so we'll grab coffee, we'll grab a conversation and try to help.
My brother Mickey, and you know, Mickey is absolutely, he's the rock star of the Barra family, no doubt about it. And he had 27 Hinckley Institute interns in Washington, D.C. 27. I've just made a commitment to the Salt Lake Community Film School over here in South Salt Lake. Mm-hmm. Going to make a major contribution and going to pay for 10 kids to go to school starting in the fall. And I'm really proud that we've helped put 160 Mexican-American Latino students through college. And while I never graduated, 160 have because of the good fortune that I've had. Now, in closing, I want to give you as a gift, and it's going to be showing on the screen right now, a copy of my new book, just released on Amazon, Creating How Power 28 Essential Lessons. Thank you for being on our program today, Ross.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I look forward to the read.
Live ready, reach higher, chase the sky, beyond thinking, grow rich, you'll learn to fly. With every step forward, the future is bright. Live ready for the dreamers, ignite your light.